The starship Aether glides silently through the icy embrace of Saturn's rings, a fragile speck of humanity, adrift in a sea of ancient, shimmering particles. On board, Lyra, a young astronomer with a heart full of dreams and a head full of questions, stares out into the void. Her mission is anything but ordinary. She's not here to study the rings or map their composition. She's chasing a myth, the legend of the Celestial Weaver, a being whispered to reside within these icy fragments, has haunted her thoughts for years. It's a story dismissed by most as a fable, but Lyra knows better, or at least she hopes she does. What drove her to defy her mentor's warnings and set out alone into the unknown? It wasn't just curiosity, it was the pull of something deeper, something she couldn't quite explain. And now, as the Aether drifts deeper into the rings, that pull grows stronger. The tranquility of space is shattered in an instant, as an unfamiliar signal pulses through the ship's systems. It's faint, but unmistakable, a rhythm that doesn't belong to the natural order of things. Could this be the first clue to unraveling the mystery of the Celestial Weaver? Or is it a warning of something far more dangerous lurking within the icy shadows? This is where Lyra's story begins a journey, not just through the rings of Saturn, but into the very heart of what it means to seek the unknown. What she discovers will challenge everything she thought she knew about the universe and about herself. So, let's dive into this tale of wonder, danger, and discovery as we follow Lyra's path through the silent, shimmering expanse of Saturn's rings. What secrets lie hidden in the ice? And what will she risk to uncover them? The hum of the ship's scanners filled the cockpit as Lyra leaned forward, her eyes darting across the holographic display. A faint signal, almost imperceptible, pulsed from somewhere deep within Saturn's rings. The closer she got, the stronger it became, until the source revealed itself. A colossal structure, ancient and imposing, half buried in the icy debris of the rings. Its surface was etched with glowing runes, their light pulsating in rhythm with the eerie energy radiating from the artifact. It was unlike anything she'd ever seen, a relic from a time long forgotten, humming with a power that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As Lyra edged the ship closer, the atmosphere grew tense. The scanners began to glitch, flickering with static, and the controls responded sluggishly, as if the structure itself was resisting her approach. Alarms blared as the ship's systems started to fail, one by one. The gravity stabilizers sputtered, the thrusters faltered, and the lights dimmed, casting the cockpit in a ghostly twilight. She had a split second to decide retreat to safety, or risk a manual landing on the unstable surface of the rings. For Lyra, there was no real choice. The mystery was too compelling, the pull of the unknown too strong. With steady hands, she guided the ship toward the structure, her heart pounding in her chest. The landing was anything but smooth. The ship groaned as it scraped against the icy fragments of the rings, finally coming to rest in the shadow of the massive artifact. The moment the engines cut out, an oppressive silence settled over the cockpit. The only sound was the faint hum of the runes, their glow casting flickering shadows across the walls. Lyra knew she was in over her head. The ship's power was fading fast, leaving her stranded in the cold, dark void. But even as the reality of her situation sank in, a spark of excitement burned within her. This was uncharted territory, a discovery that could change everything. The stakes had never been higher, and yet she couldn't help but feel a thrill at the edge of the unknown. Lyra adjusted the seals on her spacesuit, her breath steady despite the icy chill radiating from the ancient structure. As her boots touched the frozen surface, a faint hum resonated beneath her, almost like a heartbeat. The runes etched into the walls began to glow, their light intensifying with every step she took. It was as if the structure recognized her, or perhaps it had been waiting for her. Her heart raced as she approached what appeared to be a solid wall, only to watch it dissolve into a shimmering archway, revealing a hidden entrance. The air inside was thick with mystery, and as she crossed the threshold, the doorway sealed shut behind her with a soft but definitive click. Trapped, Lyra had no choice but to press forward. The corridors stretched endlessly, their walls adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change as she passed. Each step brought new revelations, images of stars being spun into constellations, galaxies woven like tapestries, and a figure cloaked in light, guiding the threads of existence. The myth of the Celestial Weaver was no longer just a story. It was here, etched into the very fabric of this place. But as the weight of her discovery settled in, so did her doubts. Should she continue deeper into this labyrinth, or turn back and find a way to reunite with her ship and crew? The choice weighed heavily on her, each step forward a gamble against the unknown. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a vast chamber, and there, suspended in midair, was a holographic projection of the Weaver herself. The figure's voice echoed softly, yet its words carried the weight of the cosmos. "You tread where few have dared," it warned, "but know this, the balance of the universe hangs by a thread. Forces beyond your comprehension seek to unravel what has been woven. To proceed is to risk everything, but to turn back may doom us all." The words lingered in the air, and Lyra felt the enormity of her decision, like a gravitational pull. The stakes were no longer just about her survival, they were about the fate of the stars themselves. The hologram flickered one last time before dissolving into a fine mist of light, leaving Lyra alone in the quiet vastness of the ancient structure. The words echoed in her mind like a distant thunderclap. "Restore the balance, or all will be lost." What balance, and what would be lost? The cryptic message hung in the air, heavy with urgency. Without hesitation, Lyra pressed forward, her footsteps echoing softly against the metallic floor. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling stretching so high it seemed to merge with the stars themselves. Floating before her were orbs of light, each one glowing with a unique hue, pulsating gently as if alive. As she approached, the orbs revealed themselves to be more than mere light. They were representations of celestial bodies, miniature worlds suspended in space. She recognized the fiery glow of the sun, the swirling blues of Earth, and the icy rings of Saturn itself. The chamber felt alive, humming with a low, resonant energy that seemed to respond to her presence. Drawn to the orbs, Lyra reached out, her fingers brushing against the one representing Saturn. The moment she made contact, the chamber shuddered. The orbs began to move, swirling around her in a chaotic dance, their light intensifying. The structure around her groaned and shifted, walls sliding and realigning as if waking from a long slumber. Outside, the rings of Saturn trembled, their delicate balance disrupted. Ice and rock fragments began to break apart, spiraling into chaotic orbits. Lyra's ship, still tethered to the structure, sent a distress signal as the instability threatened to tear it apart. The solar system itself seemed to hold its breath, teetering on the edge of catastrophe. Lyra's heart raced. Her simple act of curiosity had set something monumental in motion. The cryptic warning now made terrible sense. She had unwittingly disrupted a balance older than time itself. The stakes were no longer just about her survival. The entire solar system was at risk. Her mind raced, searching for a way to undo what she had done. But the orbs continued their erratic dance, their light growing brighter, more chaotic. Whatever she had awakened, it was clear. This was no ordinary structure. It was a machine, a guardian, and she had triggered its defenses. Now, with the rings of Saturn unraveling and her ship in peril, Lyra faced a choice. She could retreat, abandon the chamber, and hope the instability would resolve itself. Or she could stay, dive deeper into the mystery, and try to restore the balance before it was too late. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, but something inside her stirred. A resolve, a determination to see this through. Whatever lay ahead, Lyra knew one thing for certain. Her actions had set the wheels of fate in motion, and she was the only one who could stop them. As Lyra's fingers traced the intricate patterns of the control panel, she felt a strange resonance, as if the ancient runes were alive beneath her touch. The symbols pulsed faintly, their glow intensifying as she studied them. It didn't take long for her to realize that these were the same markings she had seen on the exterior of the structure, a language older than human history, yet somehow familiar. Piece by piece, she began to decipher the text, her mind racing as the words revealed a startling truth. The Weaver's power wasn't just connected to the structure, it was intertwined with the very rings of Saturn themselves. The planet's majestic bands weren't just a cosmic marvel, they were a source of immense energy, a force waiting to be awakened. With a mix of awe and trepidation, Lyra made her choice. She pressed her hand against the panel, activating it. Immediately, the structure trembled, and a surge of energy rippled through the chamber, lighting up the walls with a cascade of golden light. The floor beneath her shifted, revealing a hidden passage that spiraled downward into the heart of the structure. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, as if the ancient corridors were alive with anticipation. Every instinct told her to proceed, to uncover the secrets that lay ahead. But just as she took her first step forward, a sharp beep echoed from her wrist communicator. The ship's distress beacon had activated. Her heart sank. The beacon was only triggered in emergencies, and now it was broadcasting a signal strong enough to reach any vessel within light years. She glanced back at the passage, torn between the allure of discovery and the urgency of the situation. Her crew, her family, were counting on her, and then another alert. An unknown vessel was approaching Saturn, its trajectory unmistakable. It wasn't human. The stakes had just skyrocketed. Lyra stood at the crossroads, her decision weighing heavily. Should she delve deeper into the mysteries of the Weaver, or return to the ship to face whatever threat was closing in? The fate of her mission, and perhaps the fate of Saturn itself, rested on her next move. Lyra's heart raced as she stepped into the vast chamber, her boots echoing softly against the ancient, metallic floor. All around her, the air shimmered with swirling ribbons of light, pulsing, alive, as though the chamber itself were breathing. Each step forward felt heavier than the last, not from the gravity of the place, but from the weight of what she might discover. The whispers of ancient voices swirled in her ears, fragmented and haunting, like fragments of a song she could almost remember but couldn't quite place. It was here, in this place of light and shadow, that the Weaver's essence was said to reside, a force so powerful it could shape the very fabric of existence. Her resolve wavered for a moment as the enormity of it all sank in. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about understanding the Weaver's power, a force that could either mend the cosmos or unravel it completely. The stories she'd heard as a child, the legends she dismissed as myth, now felt terrifyingly real. The Weaver wasn't just a figure of folklore. It was a presence, alive and waiting, its influence woven into every thread of the universe. And Lyra was standing at the edge of its domain. As she ventured deeper, the light around her began to shift, forming shapes that danced just beyond her understanding. It was as if the chamber were testing her, probing her thoughts, her fears. She felt the pull of its power, a magnetic force that seemed to whisper her name. But before she could fully grasp what was happening, a sudden tremor shook the chamber. The light flickered, and a low hum filled the air, a sound that sent a chill down her spine. The vessel, it had arrived. Her mind raced. Was it friend or foe? Its intentions were a mystery, but one thing was clear. Time was running out. If the Weaver's power fell into the wrong hands, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lyra clenched her fists, her determination hardening. She couldn't afford to hesitate. Whatever lay ahead, she had to act, not just for herself, but for the fate of everything she held dear. The chamber seemed to pulse in response, as though it, too, understood the stakes. The Weaver's essence was near, and the choices Lyra made in the next moments would ripple across the stars. Lyra's fingers moved swiftly over the ancient console, her breath shallow as she activated the chamber's communication device. The air seemed to hum with static, a faint crackle breaking the silence. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Then, a voice cut through the static sharp, commanding and laced with a hunger that sent a chill down her spine. The approaching vessel wasn't just any ship. It belonged to a faction of rogue explorers, their intentions laid bare in their words. They sought the Weaver's power, not for preservation, but for domination. Her mind raced as the reality of the situation settled in. These weren't allies. They were invaders, drawn by the same legends that had guided her here. The chamber's defenses, long dormant, flickered to life at her command. Walls shimmered with faint energy, and the air grew heavy with a low, resonant hum. But even as she fortified her position, doubt crept in. Could she hold them off alone? The rogue explorers were relentless, their ship now visible through the chamber's translucent dome, its jagged silhouette blotting out the stars. As the first breach alarm sounded, Lyra felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The rogue explorers were close, too close. Their voices crackled over the comms again, this time with a mocking edge. They knew what she guarded, and they would stop at nothing to claim it. The chamber's defenses could only hold for so long. She glanced at the Weaver's artifact, its glow pulsating faintly, as if sensing the danger. It was a power beyond comprehension, capable of reshaping worlds or unraveling them entirely. To unleash it now would be to gamble with forces she barely understood. But to do nothing would mean losing it forever. Her hand hovered over the control panel, trembling slightly. The chamber shuddered as another breach warning blared. Time was running out. She had to decide: risk everything to protect the Weaver's power, or let it fall into the wrong hands. The air grew thicker, the hum rising to a deafening pitch. Somewhere deep within the chamber, a mechanism clicked into place, as if the structure itself were urging her to act. The choice was hers, and the consequences would ripple far beyond this moment. As the chamber hummed with an otherworldly resonance, Lyra stood at the heart of it all, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the Weaver's ancient controls. The weight of her decision pressed down on her like the gravity of Saturn itself. She knew activating the Weaver's power was a gamble, but what choice did she have? The rogue explorers were closing in, their ships slicing through the rings like predators stalking their prey. With a deep breath, she made her choice. The moment her hands connected with the controls, the chamber erupted in a cascade of light, energy swirling around her like a living thing. A barrier surged to life, a shimmering wall of force that halted the invaders in their tracks. For a moment, it seemed as though the tide had turned, but the Weaver's power was not so easily tamed. It pulsed and writhed, unpredictable and wild, threatening to slip from her grasp. Lyra's mind raced as she fought to maintain control, her thoughts a storm of fear and determination. She could feel the energy coursing through her, not just around her, as if it sought to merge with her very being. The realization hit her like a shockwave. This power could consume her, leaving nothing behind but a hollow shell. Yet, she couldn't let go. The barrier was all that stood between the rogue explorers and the fragile balance of the rings. As the barrier flickered, its light dimming in uneven waves, Lyra's resolve wavered. The explorers, undeterred, began to regroup, their ships maneuvering for a final, crushing assault. Her heart pounded, each beat echoing the urgency of the situation. Time was running out, and with it, her strength. The Weaver's power was both her weapon and her prison, and she could feel its tendrils tightening around her will. In that moment, Lyra faced not just the threat of the invaders, but the cost of her own choices. The stakes had never been higher, and the line between victory and destruction grew thinner with every passing second. As the rogue explorers closed in, their ships buzzing like angry insects, Lyra felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The Weaver's power surged through her, a torrent of energy that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. With a deep breath, she raised her hands, channeling that immense force into a single, focused burst. The shockwave that followed was deafening, a ripple of raw energy that sent the invaders scattering like leaves in a storm. But the victory came at a cost. The rings of Saturn, delicate and ancient, shuddered under the strain. Cracks began to form, spreading like spider webs across the icy surface, threatening to shatter the entire structure. For a moment, Lyra hesitated. She could feel the Weaver's essence within her, a living, breathing force that seemed to hum with both power and fragility. The rings were more than just a celestial marvel. They were a bridge between worlds, a symbol of connection and balance. If they collapsed, the consequences would ripple across the cosmos, disrupting civilizations and tearing apart the delicate harmony of the universe. It was then that Lyra made her choice. No longer the curious explorer driven by wonder, she had become something greater. Her journey had transformed her, not just in skill, but in spirit. She looked out at the crumbling rings, her resolve hardening. She would not let this beauty, this symbol of unity, be destroyed, even if it meant giving up everything. With a calm she didn't know she possessed, Lyra reached out to the Weaver's essence, merging her consciousness with its timeless energy. The process was overwhelming, like stepping into a river of stars. She could feel herself dissolving, her thoughts and memories blending with the infinite. But she held on, focusing on one thing, stabilizing the rings. Bit by bit, the fractures began to heal, the icy fragments knitting themselves back together. The cosmos held its breath as Lyra, now more than human, became a part of the very fabric of existence. The stakes had never been higher. Lyra's sacrifice was not just an act of bravery, it was a testament to her growth, her willingness to put the needs of the universe above her own. The rings of Saturn, shimmering once more, stood as a monument to her selflessness, and though her physical form was gone, her essence would forever echo through the stars, a reminder of the power of sacrifice and the enduring spirit of exploration. The cosmos had been saved, but at a cost that would resonate for eons. Lyra's journey had come full circle, from a curious wanderer to a hero who gave everything for the greater good. And as the rings of Saturn gleamed in the starlight, they whispered her name, a quiet tribute to the one who had become part of their eternal dance. As Lyra's consciousness intertwines with the Weaver's, she is swept into a cascade of sensations, unlike anything she has ever known. It's as if the very fabric of existence unravels before her, revealing the birth of stars, the dance of galaxies, and the slow, inevitable collapse of cosmic structures. She witnesses the universe in its infancy, a swirling sea of light and energy, pulsating with the raw potential of creation. And then, in a heartbeat, she sees its end, a cold, silent expanse where even time itself seems to fade. This vision is not just a glimpse, it's a profound understanding, a truth etched into her very being. The Weaver, she realizes, is not merely a guardian of Saturn's rings. It is a custodian of balance, a force tasked with ensuring that the scales of existence remain steady. As the vision fades, Lyra feels the weight of her actions pressing down on her. She had come seeking answers, but now she understands the gravity of what she has disrupted. Her journey, her choices, even her defiance, they had all rippled through the delicate equilibrium the Weaver had maintained. The realization is both humbling and terrifying. For the first time, Lyra sees herself not as a solitary adventurer, but as a thread woven into the vast tapestry of the cosmos. Her role, once unclear, now crystallizes before her. She must become an instrument of restoration. The internal conflict that had plagued her since the beginning of her journey begins to dissolve. The questions that once haunted her, who am I? Why am I here? Are replaced by a quiet resolve. She is not just Lyra, the wanderer. She is Lyra, the Mender. The stakes, however, are higher than ever. The damage she has caused is not irreparable, but it demands her full attention, her unwavering dedication. The Weaver's purpose is not to punish, but to guide, and now it is her turn to act. With this newfound clarity, she prepares to step forward, not as a passive observer, but as an active participant in the grand design of the universe. The journey ahead is daunting, but for the first time, Lyra feels a sense of alignment, a harmony within herself that mirrors the balance she must now restore. Lyra slowly opened her eyes, the shimmering glow of the Weaver's energy still radiating from her body like a soft, celestial light. Her hands trembled slightly as she raised them, channeling the newfound power to steady the trembling rings of Saturn. The immense effort left her breathless, her strength waning with every pulse of energy she released. Yet, there was a quiet determination in her gaze, a resolve that hadn't been there before. As the rings stabilized, their icy particles glinting like scattered diamonds, the rogue explorers who had once sought to exploit the Weaver's power watched in stunned silence. They hesitated, their earlier confidence replaced by a wary uncertainty. One by one, they began to retreat, their ships vanishing into the void of space. But before they disappeared completely, their leader turned back, locking eyes with Lyra. "This isn't over," they vowed, their voice echoing across the stars. Lyra stood firm, her exhaustion tempered by a growing sense of purpose. She could have pursued them, used her power to ensure they never returned, yet she chose to let them go. It wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. The vision had shown her the delicate balance of the Weaver's energy, the way it connected all things. To use it as a weapon, even against those who threatened her, would have been a betrayal of its true purpose. Compassion, she realized, was not a flaw but a strength. As the last of the rogue ships faded into the distance, Lyra felt the weight of her new responsibility settle upon her shoulders. The Weaver's power was a gift, but it was also a burden. She knew now that her journey was far from over. The stakes had shifted. No longer was she simply a wanderer among the stars. She had become a guardian, tasked with protecting the Weaver's energy from those who would seek to misuse it. The tranquility of the rings, the quiet beauty of Saturn's orbit, was now her domain to defend. The stars above seemed to shimmer with approval, their light reflecting off the icy particles that danced around her. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the vastness of the cosmos stretch out before her. She was no longer alone in this journey. The Weaver's power flowed through her, a constant reminder of the connection she now shared with the universe itself. And as she gazed into the endless expanse, she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. As Lyra guided the Aether away from the rings of Saturn, the ship hummed with a newfound energy, its systems glowing faintly with the Weaver's mysterious power. The journey back to Earth stretched ahead, a quiet expanse of stars and silence, offering her time to reflect. She couldn't shake the weight of what she carried, not just the Weaver's energy, but the immense responsibility of deciding how much to reveal. Should she share everything, or would the knowledge of such power be too dangerous in the wrong hands? Her thoughts churned as the Aether glided through the void, its course steady, but her resolve anything but. Then, as if the universe itself were testing her, a faint signal pierced the quiet. It wasn't like the Weaver's call. This was sharper, more insistent, emanating from deep within the asteroid belt. Lyra's heart quickened as she analyzed the data. Another structure, perhaps. Another relic of an ancient civilization, waiting to be uncovered. The possibilities raced through her mind, each more tantalizing than the last. But with them came a gnawing unease. What if this discovery held even greater power, or greater peril? The signal pulsed again, pulling her focus like a siren's song. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the controls. Earth was still her destination, her duty clear, yet the allure of the unknown tugged at her, whispering of secrets waiting to be unraveled. Could she risk diverting her course? And if she did, what might she awaken this time? The Weaver had been a marvel, but it had also been a warning. The cosmos was vast, and its mysteries were not always meant to be uncovered. Lyra's gaze drifted to the stars, their distant light offering no answers, only questions. The Aether hummed softly, as if sensing her turmoil. Ahead lay the familiar embrace of home, and behind her, the endless possibilities of the unknown. The choice was hers, and the stakes had never been higher. As Lyra's ship glided through the vast expanse of space, the faint but persistent signal grew stronger, beckoning her forward like a whisper from the stars. She knew this wasn't just another anomaly. It was a call, a thread of the Weaver's legacy waiting to be unraveled. With a deep breath, she set her course toward the source, her resolve unwavering despite the dangers that lay ahead. The signal led her through a labyrinth of treacherous asteroid fields, where jagged rocks loomed like silent sentinels, their surfaces scarred by eons of cosmic collisions. Navigating this perilous stretch required every ounce of her skill, but Lyra pressed on, driven by a curiosity that burned brighter than the stars themselves. Amid the chaos of the asteroid field, something unexpected caught her eye, a glimmer of light reflecting off something far too smooth and symmetrical to be natural. As she drew closer, the truth revealed itself, the remnants of an ancient civilization, long abandoned and swallowed by time. Massive stone structures, etched with symbols that seemed to pulse with faint energy, rose from the shadows of the asteroids. Lyra's heart raced as she realized she had stumbled upon a relic of the past, a piece of history that had been lost to the cosmos. Without hesitation, she decided to explore, her sense of duty outweighing any fear of what she might find. Inside the ruins, the air was thick with mystery. Strange devices, half buried in dust and debris, hinted at a society that had once thrived on technology, far beyond anything Lyra had ever seen. The walls told stories, carvings of battles, fought with weapons that could bend reality itself, and of a war so devastating that it threatened to tear the fabric of the universe apart. As she pieced together the fragments of this forgotten history, Lyra began to understand the gravity of what she had uncovered. This wasn't just a tale of a single civilization's rise and fall. It was a warning, a testament to the destructive power of unchecked ambition. The stakes of her journey had never been higher. With every step deeper into the ruins, Lyra felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She wasn't just exploring for the sake of discovery and amour. She was uncovering truths that could reshape the understanding of the cosmos itself. The Weaver's legacy, it seemed, was intertwined with this ancient war, and Lyra knew that unraveling its secrets might be the key to preventing history from repeating itself. Her unyielding curiosity had led her here, but now it was her sense of duty that would guide her forward into the heart of a mystery as vast and dangerous as the stars themselves. As Lyra stepped into the shadowed chamber, the air grew heavy with the weight of centuries. The walls around her shimmered faintly, etched with symbols that pulsed with an otherworldly light. This was no ordinary room, and it was a vault, a place where the past had been carefully preserved. Beneath her fingertips, the ancient carvings seemed to hum, as if they were alive with the whispers of forgotten voices. She pressed forward, her curiosity outweighing her unease, until she found herself standing before a colossal archive. Rows upon rows of crystalline tablets lined the chamber, each glowing faintly, waiting to be read. The first tablet she touched came alive with images and sounds, flooding her mind with visions of a time long gone. She saw the birth of the Weaver, not as a single being, but as a convergence of countless minds, a collective consciousness forged in desperation. The cosmos had been on the brink of annihilation, torn apart by forces that defied comprehension. The Weaver was their answer, a guardian born from unity, tasked with preserving the delicate balance of existence. But as Lyra delved deeper, she uncovered a darker truth. The creation of the Weaver had sparked a war, a conflict so vast it had scarred the very fabric of space. Her breath caught as the realization struck her. The Weaver was not just a myth or a relic, it was a legacy, a mantle passed down through generations. And now, standing in this ancient archive, Lyra began to understand her own role in this cosmic tapestry. The artifacts she carried, the visions she had seen, they were not mere coincidences. She was connected to this lineage, part of a chain of guardians who had stood against the tide of destruction. The weight of that responsibility settled over her, a mix of awe and dread. Could she truly bear such a burden? Before she could fully process the enormity of her discovery, the sound of footsteps echoed through the chamber. The rogue explorers had returned, but they were no longer alone. At their side stood a formidable faction, their armor gleaming with unfamiliar insignias. These were no mere scavengers, they were conquerors, their eyes fixed on the archive with a hunger that sent a chill down Lyra's spine. They had come for the Weaver's power, and they would stop at nothing to claim it. The stakes had never been higher. Lyra's internal conflict raged. She had uncovered the truth, but now she faced a choice. Would she step into the role history had carved for her, or would she turn away, leaving the Weaver's legacy vulnerable to those who sought to exploit it? The chamber seemed to hold its breath, the weight of the cosmos pressing down on her shoulders as the explorers advanced. Time was running out, and the fate of everything hung in the balance. As Lyra gripped the controls of the Aether, the ship's enhanced systems hummed with precision, their golden glow casting an otherworldly light across the cockpit. The rogue explorers were relentless, their vessels cutting through the void like shadows, each maneuver bringing them closer. With a steady hand, Lyra activated the Aether's advanced navigation protocols, weaving through Saturn's rings with a grace that seemed almost impossible. But even the most advanced systems have their limits. A sudden burst of energy from one of the rogue ships struck the Aether's flank, sending a jolt through its structure. Alarms blared as the damage report flickered across the console, a direct hit to the power grid. In that moment, Lyra faced a choice. The ruins of Titan, with their ancient secrets, lay just within reach, but so did the rogue ships, hungry for whatever knowledge they could plunder. Her mind raced, weighing the risks. To stay and fight would mean risking the Aether and the irreplaceable artifacts it carried. To flee would mean leaving the ruins vulnerable. But Lyra wasn't just a guardian of the past. She was a strategist, a protector. With a determined breath, she made her decision. She would lead the rogues away, drawing their attention far from the ruins. It was a gamble, but one she was willing to take. The Aether surged forward, its engines straining as Lyra pushed them to their limits. The rogue ships followed, their pursuit unyielding. But as the chase dragged on, the damage to the Aether began to take its toll. Systems flickered, and the once steady hum of the engines faltered. Lyra's heart pounded as the power levels dropped dangerously low. She glanced at the navigation panel, her eyes locking onto a faint signal nearby. A wormhole, unstable but close enough to reach. It was a last resort, a leap into the unknown, but with the rogues closing in and the Aether's systems failing, it was her only option. With a deep breath, Lyra adjusted the course, her fingers flying over the controls. The wormhole loomed ahead, its swirling vortex, a chaotic blend of light and shadow. There was no time to second guess. As the Aether hurtled toward the anomaly, Lyra couldn't help but wonder what lay on the other side. But in that moment, survival was all that mattered. The ship's engines roared one final time, and with a flash of light, the Aether vanished into the wormhole, leaving the rogue explorers behind in stunned silence. As Lyra's ship hurtled through the wormhole, the swirling tunnel of light and shadow gave way to an unfamiliar starscape. Before her, a distant sun cast its golden glow across a system of planets, their surfaces glimmering like jewels in the void. But what truly caught her eye was a structure massive and ancient, floating in the emptiness between worlds. Its design was eerily reminiscent of the one she had encountered in Saturn's rings, its surface etched with the same cryptic symbols that seemed to hum with a faint, otherworldly energy. Despite the damage to her ship, Lyra felt a pull she couldn't ignore. Her instruments flickered, warning of failing systems, but the mystery of this place overshadowed her fear. With a deep breath, she adjusted her course, guiding the battered vessel toward the structure. Her determination was unwavering, a quiet resolve that had carried her through countless dangers. This was no time to turn back. As she drew closer, the structure's scale became apparent. It dwarfed her ship, its towering arches and spiraling pathways stretching into the darkness like a forgotten cathedral of the cosmos. Lyra maneuvered through its labyrinthine exterior, her heart pounding with a mix of awe and trepidation. The airlock opened with a hiss, and she stepped into the cold, silent interior, her boots echoing against the metallic floor. The deeper she ventured, the more she sensed something stirring, a presence that had lain dormant for eons. Her hand brushed against a wall, and the symbols flared to life, glowing with a pale, pulsating light. It was then that she saw it, a fragment of the Weaver, the ancient being that had shaped the universe's very fabric. It was smaller than the one she had faced before, but no less terrifying. The fragment stirred, its surface rippling like liquid glass as it began to awaken. Lyra froze, her mind racing. The stakes had just risen exponentially. This wasn't just an exploration anymore. It was a confrontation with a force she barely understood. Yet, even as fear clawed at her, she felt a spark of defiance. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to let the Weaver's shadow consume her. With a steadying breath, she prepared herself for what lay ahead, her resolve as unyielding as the stars themselves. As Lyra's mind intertwined with the Weaver fragment, a surge of power coursed through her veins, electrifying every fiber of her being. She could feel the ancient entity's consciousness pressing against her own, like a tidal wave, threatening to erode the shores of her identity. Visions of the cosmos unfolded before her, galaxies born and dying, stars colliding in silent explosions, and the threads of time weaving themselves into patterns she could barely comprehend. The Weaver's knowledge was vast, its wisdom unparalleled, but with it came a weight that gnawed at the edges of her humanity. She could sense her thoughts blending with the fragments, her memories slipping into the void of its infinite experience. Was she still Lyra, or was she becoming something more and something less? The conflict within her reached a fever pitch. Every decision, every thought felt like a battle. The Weaver's voice whispered in her mind, offering clarity and purpose, but at what cost? She clung to fragments of herself, her laughter, her fears, her love for the stars, but they felt distant, like memories from a life she was slowly forgetting. The more she embraced the fragment's power, the more she risked losing the essence of who she was. And yet, the universe demanded action. The rogue explorers were closing in, their ships now augmented with technology derived from the Weaver's energy. They were no longer mere adventurers. They had become something far more dangerous. The tension in the air was palpable as their vessels appeared on the horizon, their hulls shimmering with an otherworldly glow. These were not the same explorers who had once sought knowledge in the rings of Saturn. They had been transformed, their ambitions twisted by the Weaver's power into something unrecognizable. Lyra could feel their presence, their intentions radiating like a cold, unyielding light. They sought to harness the fragment's energy for their own ends, and if they succeeded, the balance of the cosmos would be shattered. The stakes had never been higher, and Lyra knew she was the only one standing between them and the Weaver's full potential. But as she prepared to face them, a question lingered in the back of her mind, one she could not ignore. Could she wield the Weaver's power without losing herself entirely? The line between ally and adversary, human and entity, was blurring with every passing moment. And as the rogue explorers closed in, their weapons humming with the same energy that now flowed through her veins, Lyra realized that the fight ahead was not just for the fate of the universe. It was a battle for her very soul. The tension was palpable as Lyra stood at the edge of the ancient structure, the Weaver fragment glowing faintly in her hands. Around her, the rogue explorers closed in, their intentions clear. They would stop at nothing to claim the fragment's power for themselves. The air crackled with energy, a storm of emotions and forces colliding in this final, decisive moment. Lyra's heart raced, but her resolve was unshakable. She had come too far, learned too much, to let it all slip away now. With a deep breath, she summoned the abilities she had honed over countless trials. The fragment responded, its light intensifying as if it recognized her as its rightful guardian. The first strike came from the rogues, a burst of searing energy aimed directly at her. Lyra reacted instinctively, raising a shield of pure, radiant force that deflected the attack. The collision sent shockwaves rippling through the ancient structure, its walls trembling under the strain. The battle raged on, each side pushing the limits of their strength. Lyra moved with precision, her newfound powers blending seamlessly with her raw determination. She wasn't just fighting for the fragment, she was fighting for the balance of the cosmos itself. The rogues, driven by greed and desperation, threw everything they had at her, but Lyra's connection to the fragment gave her an edge. She could feel its whispers guiding her, its energy amplifying her every move. As the conflict reached its peak, Lyra realized the structure itself was beginning to collapse under the weight of the unleashed energy. The ancient stones groaned, cracks spreading like spider webs across the walls. She had a choice: save the fragment and risk the structure's destruction, or let it fall into the wrong hands. In that split second, Lyra made her decision. With a final, resolute surge of power, she channeled the fragment's energy into a massive, blinding explosion. The force of the blast sent the rogue explorers reeling, their ships retreating into the void, but the cost was steep. The ancient structure, a relic of unimaginable history, crumbled into dust, its secrets lost forever. Lyra stood amidst the ruins, her body trembling from the effort, her mind reeling from the magnitude of what she had done. She had sacrificed something irreplaceable to protect something even greater. In that moment, Lyra wasn't just a wanderer or a seeker of knowledge. She had become something more, a true guardian of balance, willing to make the hardest choices for the sake of the cosmos. The Weaver fragment pulsed softly in her hands, a silent acknowledgement of her growth. Though the battle had left her forever changed, Lyra knew she had fulfilled her purpose. The path ahead might be uncertain, but for now, she had secured a fragile peace, and that was enough. As Lyra steps back onto the Aether, the ship hums with a newfound energy, a subtle vibration that seems to resonate with the very fabric of the cosmos. The Weaver's essence has intertwined with the vessel, infusing it with a quiet strength, as if the threads of the universe now flow through its core. She pauses for a moment, her hand resting on the control panel, feeling the connection between herself, the ship, and the vast expanse beyond. It's no longer just a machine, it's become an extension of her purpose, a partner in the journey ahead. Her mind drifts back to the rings of Saturn, their serene beauty, now a memory etched into her soul. She recalls the Weaver's voice, its timeless wisdom echoing in her thoughts. Balance is not a destination, it had said, but a journey. Those words settled deep within her, reshaping her understanding of what it means to seek knowledge. It's no longer about uncovering secrets for their own sake. It's about using that knowledge to protect, to nurture, to ensure harmony in a universe that thrives on connection. With a deep breath, Lyra gazes out at the stars, their light flickering like distant promises. She realizes that her quest has changed her in ways she never anticipated. She's no longer just an explorer. She's a guardian, a weaver of her own kind, tasked with safeguarding the delicate equilibrium of the cosmos. The weight of that responsibility should feel heavy, but instead it fills her with a quiet resolve. She knows the path ahead won't be easy, but it's a path she's chosen, one she's ready to walk with courage and purpose. The Aether glides forward, leaving Saturn and its tranquil rings behind. The faint shimmer of the Weaver's essence lingers, a subtle reminder of the power she now carries. As the ship accelerates into uncharted space, Lyra sets her sights on the horizon, where countless stars await her arrival. Each one holds a story, a challenge, a new thread to weave into the tapestry of her journey. And so, with the echoes of the Weaver's voice guiding her, Lyra ventures into the unknown, her heart steady and her spirit unshaken. The cosmos stretches out before her, vast and infinite, a canvas waiting to be filled with the colors of her choices. Whatever lies ahead, she knows she's ready not just to face it, but to shape it, one thread at a time.